Hey, sober friends. Each week, our podcast dives deep into recovery insights. Our companion newsletter takes that conversation to a whole different level. It's an in-depth article that explores our podcast topic from a completely different angle. Think of it as your essential resource in sobriety, content that expands and enriches what you hear on the show. Are you feeling curious? Worried that you're gonna miss out? Head to SoberFriendsPod.com, scroll to the bottom, and subscribe. Trust me, in your journey of recovery, this newsletter could be the game-changing resource you didn't know you needed.
So they don't understand that the power, and again, I think it's a power of social media to bring people in at a much higher bottom.
Yes.
Right? And not only that, the power to get normal people to start thinking about their alcohol consumption, like even if they're not alcoholic, right? Listen, the new news out there is that no amount of alcohol is healthy for you, right?
Correct.
Right? Alcohol is poison. Okay, and if you drink it, you're putting poison into your body, right? Now, again, that's just a truth, right? That's just a scientific truth. So that message is getting out there, and it can get out there so much faster and wider via social media.
I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old-timer. Here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. Morning, Steve. I have been playing around with some sober social media sites. So I've been doing a lot of stuff on TikTok, and I have had one hell of an experience there, and also Blue Sky. So on the text-based social media sites like Twitter, I haven't had much of a response. I posted something out there saying, hey, anybody sober out there on Blue Sky? And somebody responded and said, if you tag in Sober Sky, you'll get a response. And I did. And so I've almost been treating Blue Sky as a blog. Mm-hmm. In a very short period of time, I got 121 followers. Not the biggest account, but in a short period of time, that's a big deal. On TikTok, I've been posting 1 or 2 videos a day. I've pushed over 300 followers in less than a month. Put the same content on Instagram, lost 3 followers, which is very, very weird, but different sites. I find a lot of benefit of following a lot of people on social media because it is kind of a meeting in a pocket. And a lot of the people that I'm purposely focusing, especially on TikTok, on people who are newer and have smaller followings because I get a lot more motivated that way. One of the people I followed, pretty young, I'd say she's probably in her 20s, and maybe she had 100 days sober, and then she decided to experiment in controlled drinking, as happens, and she was going to have one drink, and the next thing you know, she's on a 7-day bender, as happens when you do that experiment. Mm-hmm. And she's explaining it, and she's not ready to call herself an alcoholic. And she's saying the stuff around, I'm trying to stop drinking, but I had the 7-day bender, but I'm not willing to admit I have a problem yet, which I look at that as that's part of the process. You got to get to that point of acceptance, and she's not there. Step 1's the hardest one. But she's having another day 1, which is a good thing. And I'm looking through the comments, and one of the people said, all shitty excuses. Until you admit to yourself, no one can help you. Tough love. I didn't like that. And I actually reached out to her offline and said, I don't like that comment. I'm concerned that is going to trigger you. Don't listen to people like that. But I see a comment like that, and I'm about 99% certain that's a 12-step person. because I hear stuff like that in meetings. I just don't think you can approach people like that, especially online, especially young. And I know I've heard tons of stories, especially of older people saying, I called my sponsor with a question and he just hung up on me. And I guess that worked back in the day, but I don't feel it works today.
Yeah, it's interesting in our literature and in our program that we have people who still do that. And it's like anything else. You can interpret how to use the 12-step program the best any way you want. But our literature tells us pretty much not to do that, right? Not to pound on people. It tells us when they're ready, right? Again, if you've been working with someone, if you're again in the 12 steps program, if you're a sponsor or a friend and you've been working with somebody, there's a place for tough love. There's a place, especially in my experience with men and men, there's a place just to look somebody in the eye and call bullshit on them. But to do it to a young person who you have no relationship with, right? Just to call them out of a person who's really trying to find their way, it's not an approach. It's not a appropriate comment. But we're talking about a world of social media, which is it's a wild west world. So you're going to get that, right? You're going to get those people who are going to do it. You're going to get them who are going to say, listen, the comment was well-meaning, right? I mean that honestly. The person who wrote that comment wrote it with well-meaning intent of hey, you need to get your shit together. You need to, and I agree with that. You need to admit that you have a problem. Right. And like you said, some of that experimental drinking, trying to figure it out is part of that process. It's part of that process. Hey, I knew it happened to me. I did it. Oh yeah, look at, I did it. And we'll go, that's not going so well, is it? Didn't stop me. I wasn't ready to stop drinking at the point. I was years away from stopping drinking when I first had that thought. I'm doing this experimental drinking and it's not going well. So you have to find your own way. And again, one of the things that traditional 12-step people struggle with is, and we talk about it all the time on this channel because we're part of that social media internet world, that there's this whole community out there that people are trying to find their way in. They don't want to do they don't want to do the 12-step, the AA. They don't want to do the God stuff. They don't want to do a lot of that other stuff that comes with the 12-step program, the clean house, all that kind of stuff. So they're looking for a different way.
Right.
And who am I to tell them that they can't get sober that way, right? Who am I? So I typically only, if I reply to that side of TikTok, if I'm looking at that, I too only reply with positive comments.
Yes.
Keep up the good work. Congratulations. You're doing a great job. Whatever it might be. There's a lot of AA hate out there on TikTok too, right?
Yes,
There's a lot of 12-step program haters.
This type of comment doesn't help with that.
Right. And I will sometimes, although I've stopped engaging with those people, because that's like talking politics with people, right? You can't change people's mind. So I've stopped engaging. But in the past, I have hey, what you're saying is true for some AAs or some 12-steppers, but it's not true for all of us, blah, blah, blah. And then it just doesn't, right? I realized, it's just a waste of my time. But, yeah, I don't know. I believe in the big tent theory. You come in, listen, I'm dealing with a guy right now who was looking for help. I helped him find the sponsor. That didn't work out. He called me up a couple weeks later, hey, that didn't work. I had to get rid of my sponsor. You willing to help me? Absolutely, I'm willing to help you. So we started getting together. We still see each other. He's still going to meetings. He reached out to me hey, I'm struggling. I'm still drinking. I guess I'm not ready to stop. I don't say a negative comment to him. I say, keep going to meetings. Even if you drink, just keep going to meetings. And he goes to a meeting that I go, and I told him, like, I'll be here on Wednesday, and he showed up, and I talked to him. Like, I make myself available to this guy for when he's ready, right? I don't want him to think, oh, something, I've disappointed Steve, and I can never go back and talk to him. No,
Yep.
not at all. I want you to know, like, I'm here. You can find me, and when you're ready, I'm ready, right? That's my outlook on how I help other alcoholics.
Although I will say that I might disappoint Steve, or I might disappoint John, or I might disappoint somebody else, has kept me sober.
Oh, yeah.
One of the reasons I don't drink is I don't want to disappoint the people around me. On the other hand, I don't want somebody to say, well, I'm not even going to go. I'm not even going to try this anymore out of disappointment. And that also could be the case with people.
Right.
So I think it's a good thing to tell them, even if you're still drinking, go to meetings.
Right.
Hang out. Because maybe if you do this long enough, you'll get past that desire to drink anymore, that you'll be ready. Some people need to be ready, and some people never will be ready, and you can't fix it for them.
And you can't predict, right? I mean it. You can't.
No.
You can't predict who's going to make it and when they're going to be ready. We hear these stories all the time, and I do a small meeting once in a while down at a friend's house, and we talk about all of these things. One of the guys, Monday night, right, where one of the guys was cheering a new guy, and he was talking about how he spent, I think he did 5 stints in jail, all for drinking stuff, mostly motor vehicle stuff. And he's like, you would think that would have been enough to stop me from drinking, right?
Right.
Like, you would think after the 3rd time, maybe I would say, something, maybe I shouldn't do this. But that didn't work, right? It took him 5 times. And the last time was pretty bad. And so it takes what it takes. And like I said, some guys are never ready. Some guys think they're ready. They come in. It's a tough disease to beat. It really is. Like, I have a lot of respect for this disease. I really do. I don't take it for granted. I don't poo-poo it. I don't think I'll ever be cured. So I just have a lot of respect for it, which is why I work my program as hard as I do, because I really feel, honestly, that if I start to slack off of my program, then I become way more susceptible to the fallacy, to the big lie that maybe I could drink again. Like, and I will end up there. I will end up there if I don't do what I need to do.
Yeah, exactly. I saw somebody else younger than me who had a really low bottom, and it was easy for me early on to compare myself to others because I didn't have their stories. I didn't end up in prison. I didn't have DUIs, wasn't homeless. And you hear a lot of that in 12-step meetings. The disease progresses on its own time. Some people progress slowly and some people fall off a cliff. But there also is the phenomenon that you progress slowly until you don't. So I could be a high-functioning alcoholic until I'm a low-functioning alcoholic. And you never know when that day is. Right. You may progress slowly the whole time, or maybe you don't. I've become a believer that the high-functioning alcoholic just has more of a pain tolerance, that they're too stupid to lose their job, that they continue to work hard at their job and continue to drink because they just push through the pain, or at least until they can. I think there's something to be said there. But you also don't have to wait until that point. It's okay to come in when the bottom's still high. When the bottom hits you, not the other way around. It's okay to do that. And I think with the advent of social media, I think there's a lot of people who are coming in with higher bottoms.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've been around 30 years, and 30 years ago, all you saw were the low bottom drunks, you can't treat this woman who is in her 20s as a low bottom who needs to get slapped around. I think there is the place for that. I know those people who, come in and out, in and out, in and out, and then they spew bullshit that they're here for keeps now. That type of person needs some tough love. I need to
Yeah.
pull them aside, and I've got about 10 people in mind. Pull them aside and say, what the hell is wrong with you? Do you hear yourself? You've said the same thing every single time.
Right.
What's different now?
Yep. In our program, you hear that a lot, right? You do. You hear people come in, oh, I feel different. I think I got it. I feel like I'm in a better place. And again, I look at it always now with a little bit of a grain of salt, which is like, okay, maybe they're right. Again, unless I know this person, unless I'm their sponsor and I'm meeting with them twice a week or once a week for a couple hours that I really get to know how they tick. I don't know. I think you're actually, I was thinking the same thing, right? You have a bunch of people who've been around AA for 20 or 30 years where it was very different, right? It was very different. Mm-hmm. There was no social media, there were no smartphones and all that. And a lot of those people, right? They don't do social media, right? I know a lot of guys who don't do social media. I know a lot of women too, not just guys. They just don't do social media. So they don't understand that the power, and again, I think it's a power of social media to bring people in at a much higher bottom.
Yes.
Right? And not only that, the power to get normal people to start thinking about their alcohol consumption, like even if they're not alcoholic, right? Listen, the new news out there is that no amount of alcohol is healthy for you, right?
Correct.
Right? Alcohol is poison. Okay. And if you drink it, you're putting poison into your body, right? Now, again, that's just the truth, right? That's just a scientific truth. So that message is getting out there, and it can get out there so much faster and wider via social media. So people who have no problem, or maybe just at the beginning of a problem, can now catch themselves and go, maybe I shouldn't drink at all. Right? Not because I have a problem, because it's just not healthy for me.
There's a lot of that, and I'm sure my son will eventually have a drink at some point. He's 16.
Yeah.
But this guy was bitching and moaning yesterday that nobody in his school does legs. He is like focused on leg day is as important as upper body day because, and he gave me, you get more testosterone and this type of stuff. And I'm like, or you have to do it just because, and your body rests on your legs. But he talks a lot about, here's the food I eat, here's how I conduct myself, here's the exercise I get, and my volleyball performance is so important to me. And he knows all about health and nutrition, just going to YouTube. Like, he spits back stuff. I'm like, how do you know all this stuff? And he's like, oh, I'll go to YouTube. And he studies nutrition and he studies exercises all day long. And so you can reach someone real fast. Maybe I would have done something when I was in college if there was social media, but there wasn't. So the only people I knew who drank like me were the people I hung out with, and they drank more than me. So clearly I don't have a problem.
Yeah, it was so different back then. And I've talked about it before, right? I had a brother who was one of us who struggled. I watched him struggle. He was homeless, lived in a tent in the woods, like all that. And our buddy Mike from Monday Night talks about his brother who he used to pick up and, bring home and clean up once in a while. Good for him. I never did that with my brother, but my brother had lots of, drug problems. And it was the same thing. Like I struggled with that because I just looked at him and like, that's not me. Yeah, sure. I'll drink too much and then I'll drive and I'll do this and whatever, but that's not me. So it's really hard for some of us, not everyone. It's really hard for some of us not to compare when we have someone that close to us, and we're able to say, we look at that and go, yeah. So it probably delayed me. I don't know if it delayed me coming in, but I will say this. I've talked about it before. When I came into AA the first time, and this is always interesting, and I tell this story to a lot of people who come in and I start working with, is that I thought I needed to find a group of meetings that were more highbrow than my brothers, right? Like I tell that story all the time. It's like, ooh, I don't think I want to go to the meetings he would go to. Those are low bottom drunks. They live in the woods. Like, today I laugh at that, right? Because I understand what the program's about, but I really had that thought. I started looking for meetings that like, I was a professional business guy, and there is something to be said for that, depending on what your line of work is and what your career might be. You may want to find certain meetings, but for the most part, if you're really looking to get sober, we all suffer from the same disease, and there's a lot of help out there from people who you would never even dream that could be helpful to you. I see it all the times where people I see that, especially now that have been around for a while, I see sponsors and sponsees that I go, boy, that doesn't look like it works for me, right? Like, it doesn't look like those people should be in this type of relationship. They're just two different people, but it really works well. Yeah, and again, social media, I think it's been a blessing. It's always comes with the caveat and the trolls and the bad stuff that goes along with it. But for our community, for the sober community, I just think it's just gives people another option, and I just think that there's an ability to come in and experiment with it with social media, and say, like, can I find my community here? Can it be how I get sober, or can it be just like you use it as an additional way to work your sobriety, right? By engaging in it. So lots of different uses for it, and we all should be careful of how we treat. One of the things I'm working on, and trust me, it's hard for me. Is like trying to do my actions and my words be with kindness and love, no matter what the situation is. Really, really easy to say that, and I want to strive towards that goal. Man, really, really hard for this alcoholic, for this human being, to really do that, right? And we were talking just before we came on the air that about the holiday, just as we were recording just after Thanksgiving, and I said it was mixed reviews. It's a very stressful. I love it. We have 14 people around our table. We have 4 of our grandchildren, but it's very stressful. Some of our grandchildren are young. It's a tough time for them. It can be difficult to live that. But man, what a goal! So I try to do that with other people. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt and try to be encouraging. Right? That's what I do. I always think about my sponsor when I came in. My sponsor never. I mean, he just wasn't that type of guy. Never had a bad word to say. Everything he said was with love and
Buddhism,
right? And love and gentleness and all that kind of stuff. Everything. And I may have benefited from some tough love the first time in this program. I may have, right? Because I was full of myself. But anyway, a lot of good stuff out there. If you're listening to this, if you're struggling, if you're thinking, I think if you go out and find some sober TikTok, sober Blue Sky, some of those things, you might find that it's an additional tool that you could use to enhance your sobriety.
Yeah, I totally agree here. This is around meet people where they are.
Right.
It's a management lesson that I learned leading people, that when I'm leading people in business, I can't just yell at everybody. Right. That used to be the management way back in the day. Now, there are some people I can have that relationship with where I can just pound away, and they may even ask for that. Mm-hmm. And then there are some other people that I can't. That a lot of what I used to do in leading people was I'd lead with the positive. It's a lot easier to develop somebody's strengths than it is to overcome what they're not good at. If you're not good at it, my best is going to be taking a boulder, rolling it uphill, and getting you to mediocre. And that's rolling uphill. If I can leverage your strengths, then I can roll the ball downhill or the rock downhill. And that's kind of the same thing here. Where can I address you where you are? If you're sitting there thinking, I don't know, I want to stop, but I don't know if I have a problem. Well, maybe I can be more encouraging and say, I've been relapsing, but I really don't want to drink and I'm concerned that I have a problem, reach out to you and say, why don't you just stop for today?
Right.
Maybe what can I do to help you put out of your head the whole, I don't know if I want to, or I don't know if I can do this, and just say, why don't you just try today? Let's try today as an experiment. If you get to that point where you're thinking about drinking, who can you call? Or who can you talk to? Or is it put a video up? I'm struggling with this.
Right.
That's going to help somebody else, but also let's shorten the goal. Let's make it real easy. Just let's think about today. Give me a call tomorrow and see how you feel tomorrow. But let's just get through today and do that. And you do that enough times, you're going to get somebody along. Or you can reach out to them and say, it's very brave of you to say, maybe I have a problem and that you're thinking about this stuff. That's a really great place that a lot of people don't even get to your point. So what can we do to kind of figure this out, or those type of things? And if that person comes in and out, it's like, look, you're giving me the same song and dance every time. Right. When is something going to change?
Yep. And some of that could be done privately too, right? Like there's a lot of times where, and other people do it differently. Like I go to a men's meeting. That's pretty no bullshit. It's pretty rough and tough. People will call you out in public if they think you're spewing bullshit. I'm more apt to grab somebody after a meeting or something and talk to them a little bit. Especially if I don't know them. If I know them, maybe I might. But what I find on social media, for me, it's TikTok, right? I don't really do Instagram like you do. I haven't even touched Blue Sky yet. I was never a Twitter guy. I got an account, but I haven't touched it in a long time. But what I find on TikTok is people who are in early sobriety, most of the time, will post daily videos. Day 1, day 2, day 100, right? Like a lot of times they'll do that in a way that they're trying to keep themselves accountable to somebody, right? So they're not doing the AA 12-step program or any 12-step program. Maybe they're not doing anything. So that's their way of trying to keep themselves accountable for staying sober. Yay for that, right? Yeah. Yay for that. That's what I say. Great. Put yourself out there. When I first saw that, I'm like, good for you. Put yourself out there in the world saying, hey,
accounts.
Right. Say I'm sober today and I'm going to go on this journey and I'm going to take you with me. And there's been some tough ones where people did not stay sober, right? And they struggled. And I watched some of those people struggle. But good for you that you're trying, right? You're trying. And we don't know who's going to make it, and it's sad to see the people who struggle, and then just like in our program, they disappear from our feed unless we're following them and we can track them down. Who knows where they go? Who knows if they're successful? But I say congratulations on trying something that's going to help you improve your life. And as we talked about, if you have any thought that you have a problem with alcohol, then I would say you have a problem with alcohol, right? Because that's
yes,
right. I mean, if you're like, I think I might have a problem with alcohol, then you probably have, then you have a problem with alcohol. Just the fact that you have to ask that question, because normal people don't ask that question. Right.
No.
Again, I talk about my wife. She drinks, and she may say, I'm drinking a little bit too much. Like, she may question the volume if she's on a run of drinking, but she'll self-regulate it, right? She'll do it. And next thing you know, my wife won't be drinking for weeks or months, or anything. So she doesn't have to have that constant thought that we alcoholics would have to have, that constant running, dialogue in our head where we have to ask ourselves, I think there may be a problem, whatever it is, like that we went through to get into this program. So, so if you're out there and you're new and you're trying this out, like I said, yay for you. Keep it up, keep going. Certainly don't let the trolls there, but also understanding that when somebody reaches out, most of the time they're doing it with concern for you. Yes. And if they're giving you some tough love, sometimes there's some messages in there that you could use. You may not like the delivery. You may not like it so publicly, but I guess if you put yourself out there in the public, right, you have to expect public comments. But you can look at it and go, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I got to take a look at something, right? Maybe I got to try something different. So, but listen, I love it out there. I love the fact that there's another option for people to get sober. I've watched it devastate lives. I've watched it take lives, like the disease actually take lives. So it's a deadly disease, and not only is it deadly, it's debilitating, and it ruins a lot of stuff within your orbit for those of us who have a problem. And that's the biggest thing for me, that I know that if I pick up a drink, you put alcohol on Thanksgiving, which is like I said, it's a very stressful time.
Yeah.
You put me drinking during that time, it would be a disaster. But first of all, it would stop happening. People would stop coming. So. Yeah, right. So, that's why I need to keep working it. I need to understand that for this alcoholic, a drink isn't going to make anything better. It might make me feel better in those moments of chaos, but in the long run, it's only going to devastate everything around me.
Well, I'd love for you to follow us on social media. As you heard, Twitter is not an option. I have no presence on Twitter, and anything that I had, I deleted. But you can find us on Facebook, which is a mirror of the Instagram feed. And I don't really pay much attention to Facebook because that's another one I don't follow. But you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. And the handle is always @SoberFriendsPod. I highly recommend Blue Sky. I have been loving Blue Sky, and I will tell you, I block liberally to keep my feed clean. But then again, if you're a troll and you're going to make those comments, you're only helping the algorithm and helping more people come my way. You can email us, Matt@soberfriendspod.com. We love the interaction. I love interacting with you and hearing your stories, your feedback about the show, all that type of stuff. Steve, thank you for doing this today.
Hey, Matt, glad to be here. Happy Sunday, happy Tuesday when you hear this, or Wednesday. Whenever you might listen to it. Happy whatever day when you finally find time to listen to this. We're heading into the crazy Christmas season out there. So if you're one of us, pay attention, right? Pay attention to it. Do some extra work. Reach out to your friends. Reach out to the people who support you. And have a great week.
Have a great week, everybody. Bye, everyone.